Howdy, guys, gals, and non binary pals. This is the Tales from the Waystone Summer Reading Program.
We are your hosts, Will and Phoenix. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the first installment of our series on Becky Chambers' monk and robot duology. It has begin, where we'll be reading chapters 1 and 2 of the first novella, A Psalm for the Wild-Built.
Nice Critical Role and Matt Mercer reference.
Yep.
Awesome. Alrighty, if this is your first time here, welcome. An explanation of the pod. Each week we'll be examining... things got changed. Each week we'll be examining 2 chapters of the monk and robot duology and figuring out what we can take from the text to apply to our real lives. We'll also take some time to focus on something we have learned this week, and then we will share a recommended thing of the week, and we will wrap things up with a notable quotable, although that's not the order in which we do things, from the book that made us smile or think or laugh. Before we begin, let's get some disclaimers out of the way. First of all, we are in no way affiliated with Becky Chambers or her publisher, Tor Books. Second of all, our discussions. Wow, it's almost like I haven't done this in a while. Second of all, our discussions naturally assume that you have either read the first 2 chapters of A Psalm for the Wild-Built, or you just don't care about spoilers, so we're going to go ahead and do this anyway. Also, a word to our community, please be kind to yourselves, one another, and the creators of the worlds that we love exploring. Also, mild disclaimer, if I sound like I am getting over a cold, it's because I'm getting over a cold. There is a whole bunch of junk in my system, my throat and lungs and stuff, and it's annoying.
But we wanted to make sure we got a chance to record this for you folks because we got some interesting stuff to talk about.
Absolutely. Now, the reason I am sick is because I had fun at the Ghost concert. Totally worth it. That is all.
With that out of the way, let's start with Chapter 1, A Change in Vocation.
So are we just going to totally skip over the historical god religious lore stuff?
No, let's start with a little of that before we get into the nuts and bolts of things.
I think that is a bit of set dressing that helps get into kind of this calm, rambly, not really plot-driven narrative. It's like a preamble. Does it have anything interesting that you want to talk about?
Thematically, not really. However, I do think that it does set the stage for the fact that we're going to be going into a lot of stuff where there aren't easy answers. I think the most illuminating sentence in that first little preamble, prologue, or prelude, or whatever you want to call it, is, if you ask 6 monks, you'll get 7 answers.
That does set the vibes pretty well. I think that could be applied to if you ask 6 officials in any given subject, or experts or knowledge bases in any given subject. You'll get different answers depending on the time of day.
Especially as you get deeper. Like the easy questions, the surface level questions, consensus is easy. It starts getting a little harder once you get into things where the evidence is not readily apparent, where people's individual cognitive biases come more into play.
When the work is mysterious and important?
Yeah. The more hidden information there is, the more room for divergent opinions there are. So that's kind of where we're getting into it right now.
To set the scene, the books, we are well aware that this set of books does not have a traditional plot. This set of books is not about going from one point to another point.
Yeah, there isn't really a big inciting incident or anything like that. There's just an individual having an experience in their brain and trying to basically scratch an itch.
Although I would say that we could still map it on a hero's journey. It's just a very mundane hero's journey.
So our principal protagonist is Sibling Dex, who is a monk in this society. And things kick off when they realize that they've been missing the sound of crickets.
Not that they know what the sound of crickets is. They know what the sound of crickets on a recording is, but they've romanticized the idea of being away from the city, from being away from civilization, from being away from noise, specifically people noise. They've grown dissatisfied with their current routine and want a new one, but don't want to be told how to do it. They want to discover things on their own. They want to learn on their own, learn from books, And so they give up their current vocation of what is essentially shepherding gardens in the city to become a tea monk, which is almost a therapist, like a traveling therapist,
Slash bartender.
mixologist.
Yeah.
The specifics of what they want to do isn't really the point. It's a nice framework on which to hang the character, I guess. I think that this idea of being a tea monk allows you to have the setting that you want, which is very calm and very contemplative. This is world building and making sure that we all know that it's meant to be calm, relaxing. Like there could be a different vocation that is also soothing and calming, but that tea monk kind of puts you into this space in the world. Sibling Dex has worked as calming of a job as you could already. Cultivating horticulture isn't like high adrenaline action. It's still a very inside one's own head kind of a job where you go through routines where you know the specifics of what you do, but you don't really need to think outside of that routine to function, right? You know what fertilizer to put on what plants when. You know when to do cuttings. You know when to do certain actions and when to ask for help on doing something that requires heavy lifting or whatnot. But it's still a very introverted space.
Yeah, I noticed that Sibling Dex has a few paradoxical motives. They want something that will bring them connection with the world around them. And at the same time, they sometimes, I think, take for granted the existing connections they already have.
I'd say their pursuit in becoming a tea monk, which is traveling around from little town to little town to little town, bringing just this little oasis of calm with them, with a noble goal of helping people, nebulously helping people, but like specifically giving people an island of calm. They want to do this because they think that they can without knowing the full extent of what it means. They just know that they're dissatisfied with where their life has taken them now. They're just under 30. They want a purpose. And they've received value from tea monks in the past, from the service that those people have provided. And they do the thing of look at it and go, that can't be that hard.
I could do that.
I could do that. It's the equivalent almost of people who have some crochet skills going to a crochet market and going, this gives me an idea of what I could do instead of I'm going to pay people for their expertise. Or even like, to throw myself under the bus. Sometimes I look at a craft and say, I could definitely learn that through videos or not having, a structured learning something. Look at the quilling kits that I have and look at some of the other things that are like, I want to learn this thing. So I'm going to get all of the high quality stuff right now and get all of it, ready. And I'm going to totally do it. And then in the 3 days that it takes to get to the house, all interest in it has kind of.
It's kind of funny because, everybody is 100% supportive of Sibling Dex trying this out.
They give Sibling Dex some gentle guidance. Would you like to do an apprenticeship? Would you like to have people actually help you, get you on your feet, set you up for success? Nah. Okay. In the way that a lot of neurodivergent people have, Sibling Dex has got an itch under their skin, and they have decided that they are doing a thing, doing the research that they think that they need to do, but not the research that will actually set them up to do it well.
There is, I think, a sense of stubborn self-reliance there.
So explain autodidact.
An autodidact is someone who believes in teaching themselves everything and learning everything by doing.
There's a lot of this in a lot of the communities that we've both been a part of. Like that is the thing that a lot of crafters do. It's also a lot of things that a lot of musicians do. And I am here to say that not everybody who has ambitions to play music can do so without a teacher.
The thing about being self-taught at everything, while you can teach yourself a lot, you also oftentimes can run into walls that you don't know are there because you don't have anyone to tell you that the habits that you've picked up are limiting you.
Or you run into things that you think are walls but aren't actually walls.
Right. You may find yourself going down blind alleys that don't yield any further production.
Or you might hit something that you think is limiting, where if you just went the other direction just slightly, you'd find a reasonable, if not easy, solution. But you just have to think about it in a way that another person might be able to tell you about, might be able to show you. So, without nearly as much thought as they think that they have put into this whole decision, they barrel headlong into this new vocation. They put all of their hopes, dreams, desires, and ego into becoming a tea monk.
And they discover, much to their chagrin, that they're not instantly good at it.
Again, this is very, very neurodivergent coded. There's a lot of, quote, gifted kids who are now adults that are running into issues where if they're not instantly good at it, they just give up. They don't struggle. Sibling Dex, though, struggles through it.
As much due to their own pride as anything else,
They could have given up the whole endeavor.
or even so much as asked for help.
That too. But again, there's that thing. They're seeing the idea of asking for help as the same as giving up, admitting that they aren't instantly good at something, or that they might need a reality check, or that they might appreciate just having someone with lived experience explain what's going on. Like any of those things, as the same as failing. Like, there's something out there that I've heard, and I think it was probably from Hank Green, where some of us view us ourselves asking for help as failure and as a weakness. But if you're on the other side, seeing someone ask you for help is a sign of strength and vulnerability.
Yeah, we're oftentimes a lot more graceful to other people than we are to ourselves.
It's a completely different view. Like, I know people who are of the opinion that if they ask people to participate in or watch or attend something that is like, hey, I'm proud of this and I'm presenting this and I'm going to show it to people, or I'm going to have you try this thing that I made, and go, well, they clearly aren't going to want to do that. Like, none of my friends are going to want to come watch me play guitar. None of my friends are going to want to try this new game that I made. None of my friends are going to want to whatever. So they self-limit. Where I'm here to tell you that some of those friends that have said this to me, like, none of my friends want to do that. I'm like, I do. Like, if one of your friends, like, looking at my friend who was literally saying nobody wants to support me kind of stuff, I'm like, but if I made something, wouldn't you want to come and support me? And he's like, yeah, I definitely would. And I'm like, why do you think no one wants to support you?
You think so little of your friends?
That's my point. Do you really think that you're friends with people who are going to just be buttholes?
One thing that I kind of notice is that sibling Dex sometimes does not give their friends, their colleagues, the grace to say that, yeah, these are people who actually want to support me. In spite of the fact that there is no evidence that their friends are anything other than supportive.
They even throw a party in Sibling Dex's honor to see them off
Yeah.
without being prompted any of that. They're going out of their way to offer help.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think a single one of them would shame Sibling Dex for saying, hey, I might need a little more knowledge than what I can find in a book. Please, thank you.
Can I at least use you as a guinea pig to try this out?
Exactly.
Like, give you a safe audience.
And so, of course, their first person that they try to help comes to them with a problem, and Dex is just out of their depth, is worried about the wrong things. Instead of actually being welcoming, actually being open, they're very self-centered, they're very self-aware. And I'd liken it a little bit to when we've worked at conventions. You're there at a little booth with a whole bunch of people that have every incentive not to spend their money, and you're trying to get them to spend their money on you. It's given me a very skewed perspective when I go to other cons or sellers markets or whatever. In the same way that other people were much more willing to buy from our booths when people reached out and said, hey, I want to talk to you about this thing that I'm trying to sell. I understand being nervous, and I understand all of that, like the posture and the insular and the wanting to just be a person who is a creative and that's enough. But unfortunately, if you're at one of those markets, you have to sell yourself.
You have to market yourself.
You have to reach out and talk to the people who are perusing your stall. You have to talk to people.
And you have to listen to them.
Exactly.
Like sibling Dex's first go around at this, they're all the way stuck in their head. They have this script that they believe that they're supposed to say, and they're not actually sure how to adapt that script when they actually encounter an actual living, breathing human being
With actual problems, with actual needs. Yeah. It's a dumb example, but it is an example that I have. So a lot of my friends played World of Warcraft before I did, and they talked about their characters and they talked about all of this stuff. Same thing with D&D, like these very narrative focused games where you get to role play, but it's within a set of rules, right? And I didn't know the rules. And so I would sit there and imagine what kind of character I could make, what kind of thing I could do, what kind of specialization I could make for myself. And then I'm hitting this wave of reality that is the actual structure of the game that I'm trying to prepare to play, because I get it in my head of like, I just want to think about this and like think of it like a story, like a narrative, like something I can control more than I can. And then all of that preparation, all of that backstory, all of that stuff just gets chucked out the window when you actually do wind up playing with a group, with a structure, with a set of rules, with an evolving narrative that isn't fully written out in your head. Because you're not making it up. It's either been made up previously or it's being made up collaboratively. And so instead of it just being like what I think it's going to be like, sometimes it's completely not that.
It's that whole idea that, the best laid plans fall apart in the face of reality.
I mean, that even happens like if you're watching Critical Role. You'll see them for like seriously 20 minutes trying to figure out the plan for the upcoming combat. And then 10 seconds into the combat, it's just that the plan got chucked out the window.
And, Dex comments, or the narrator more accurately comments, that Dex has found himself in that uncanny valley between reading about a thing and having done the thing.
Yeah. I think, though, that we've talked about this section to death, and I don't know that we are getting more value out of it by continuing.
So let's do the time skip. So the next chapter skips forward 2 years.
And in the way of things, Dex has learned.
They've had some hard lessons and come out the other side having actually learned them. We pick up with Dex stopping at one of their frequent spots.
The big thing to note is that Dex has created a routine, created a persona, created a scarcity almost, because they're going around to multiple places and they're stopping for like a day or two in each one. There's a calendar of where they're going to be when. They've built up this anticipation.
They've built a reputation as the best T-Monk in Panga.
And now that they're established and kind of in this settled space, they don't like it.
They still haven't heard crickets. They thought that if they just got out of the city and got out into the countryside, they'd hear crickets.
Without knowing. They have what is essentially the internet in their pocket. This book does a good job of making us take a look at consumerism by being completely the opposite. Dex's pocket computer is nearly 15 years old, and they've only had to repair it 5 times in that time. But they repair it. They don't replace it. They repair it.
It's, like Dex's Ox bike, which is sort of a electric bike with a little RV trailer on the end. It's got a whole bunch of stuff that we'd consider fairly high tech. Like it's got powerful batteries, so it'll assist in pulling. And it's got a full interior and everything, but everything is handcrafted and everything is meant to last.
Everything is of high quality, especially for Dex's monastic life. Everything in this world seems like it's well taken care of. Like the wilderness is well taken care of. The items that people have are well taken care of. The infrastructure.
And it comes down to little things too. Like everything is really thoughtfully designed and meant to be sustainable. One of the villages cares so much about the wild biomes of the forest floor that they go out of their way to avoid setting foot on the forest floor unnecessarily. And they have a pretty rigid definition of what's considered necessary. Like, it's not just to get my food or whatever. It's no, literally, you go down there only if there's no other way to get what you need. And so they live in hanging houses in the treetops.
They've come up with solutions that are thoughtfully designed, that are kind, that are maybe not the easiest thing to do, but that doesn't matter.
There isn't what I would call human chauvinism. Like, they recognize humanity is just one part of the larger biosphere, and it doesn't get to take precedence over the other parts.
We slowly learn that this world is post robotics, post current technology. It's being kind of reclaimed by the wilderness with the assistance of humans.
Yeah, even the one city in Panga is way different from how we would think of a city. Like, instead of relying solely on surrounding farmland to provide all crops and food, each building has a self-sustaining garden that provides all of the food that its residents need. It's covered in greenery, it's covered in solar panels to provide energy. Like, so it's not polluting, it's not just sucking out resources.
And it's not generating waste.
Right. Everything gets reused. It generates its own food. It cares for everybody in the society. Like, this is a true post-scarcity society. They don't even really have money per se. All they have are PEBs, which are really just IOUs for services rendered. We'll get more into PEBs in the second book. They get explained more. But this is why you can have this idea of a post-scarcity, post-hierarchical world. Like, even the overseer of the monastery doesn't actually control anything. She just oversees. Like, yep, I see it.
And probably handles minor disputes, if there are.
Handles minor disputes, and then makes sure that people have what they need to do what they're setting out to do without actually directing it. But that just kind of gives you the vibe of what this entire society is built around. It's mutual good. It's kind of like this weird post-scarcity commune almost.
And in the same way that I can see a reader becoming very restless with the nothing happens in this book, Dex, while not being like, rah, 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 I need action, feels aimless even though they've set themselves up with a routine that they are expected now to follow.
Well, and by any objective measure that they could set for themselves, they've achieved success. They said that they wanted to become a tea monk. Okay, they've become a tea monk. They said they wanted to teach themselves. Okay, they taught themselves. They
are being recognized by their constituents, I guess, by their, I don't want to say customers because it's not really a goods as commodity.
Right, they don't sell anything.
Right. But they've been known by their community, I guess, to be an excellent tea monk, to have fulfilled this desire up to like the highest standards. And now they're restless.
The old itch is coming back.
They're like, I thought that by making this huge life change, that it would make me happy. But they're feeling unfulfilled again. They don't want to do the same thing over and over again. That was the problem before. They thought it was because they didn't hear crickets. It's not that. It's wanting something new, something unexpected, something different. Wanting something else as a purpose. And not in the same way that society makes us driven to productivity, where if you make something, somebody looks at it and goes, you could totally sell that.
Yeah, I think it is something that we all can empathize with, that need to find a purpose. How do you find purpose when there is no one right answer? Like, that's the maddening thing. Like, you will get people who will tell you that it's your professional career, that it is personal wealth. You'll get people who will tell you it is the pursuit of excellence in your craft. You'll get people who will tell you it is in what you bring to your community. They will tell you that it is in all of these different things.
If you ask 6 people, you'll get 7 answers.
Yeah, no easy consensuses. And even on things that sound like objective goods, once you start examining it too hard, you can talk yourself out of it. Like, for example, Someone might tell you your purpose lies in the value you bring to your community. And then when you start thinking about it, you start realizing that at a certain point, if all you prioritize is the good of your community over everything else, you basically become a happiness pump. Like you're just a productivity unit to generate happiness for other people. And that isn't really very fulfilling because it doesn't even give you room for agency. And then the flip side, you're like, okay, well, I'll live for my own personal excellence or what have you. And you can devote yourself to your craft, to getting as much out of it as you can, and you'll still find yourself empty. Because what good did all of that excellence actually do for anybody? What did it even do for you? You got doing really good at a thing that at the end of the day is just a thing. So what's it all for?
You get people that are like me, where it's like, find the happy medium between what you can do for others and what you can do for yourself. But then you ignore one or the other. You feel guilty about one or the other. You feel like there must be something more. And right now, Dex feels like there's gotta be something more. And in that same way that they couldn't ignore the itch, they couldn't stop themselves from continuing to think about crickets. And in that same way that they impulsed into their new vocation, they follow an impulse, look up cricket noises, and find that one of the recordings is somewhere nearby enough that it seems like an achievable goal to go discover if the crickets are still there.
Now, granted, it's relatively near.
Right. It's not actually near. It's not a journey, it's not down the street.
It's out in the mountains in sort of the wild zone where humans have basically abandoned all settlements there. And it's this protected wilderness area that humans have abandoned and robots have settled in after they left their factories.
This ties back into our little bits of narrative talking about how robots and robotics were made purpose built. There was a reason for them to be built, and then they took over the menial tasks that used to be done by humans and eventually grew sentience.
Then they decided to leave. Humans offered them a place as equal citizens in human society, and the robots politely declined.
And currently, they don't interact at all with humans, like to the point where one could be excused for believing that they were myth. So Dex takes the hard route because they can't see themselves taking the easy route any longer. They can't be fulfilled. They can't be calm. They are going to be restless and itchy until they fulfill and sate this curiosity. It's not about the crickets.
There's a Robert Frost poem written right about him. you know, I came to the fork in the road and I took the road less traveled.
In this case, the road less traveled is a asphalt road that has been overgrown and disrupted by roots, disrupted by trees.
Potholes, sinkholes, you name it.
And all Dex has is in their little tiny RV being pulled around by an electric bike that is not made for rough roads.
There's fallen branches.
There's fallen trees.
You name it. There's debris everywhere. It's also, they're going up a mountainside, so it's all uphill.
Little dips, lots of steep hills. But they're stubborn and they are not going to turn around.
They have every opportunity. No one would fault them if they turned around.
No one would know.
Right. It would only be another hour to get back to the main road. But they keep going. When they finally crest the hill, it's smooth sailing going down, and they find a perfect little campsite.
Dex seems at home isolated, or at least they seem happy just doing something for themselves in a way that, if you're driven to do something, you can't really be deterred off that path. Like when I was at my last job, I would sometimes sit before work started and draw. And I had an internal need and a kind of itchy feeling of, I need to keep doing this. I need to get whatever that creative thing is out of me. I need to do this thing. This is a need. This isn't a want. This is a need. And I'm obsessed. And it feels that same way, to the point where work time would roll around and I'd still be in that need to draw, but I'd also be in responsible adult land where I was like, I really ought to get logged in and set to work and, doing my tasks and whatnot. But I still just wanted to pick up that pencil. I still wanted to draw. It was just itchy. And sometimes it's just that subversive thing of like, I know I'm not supposed to be doing this thing, but I want to so bad right now. And that feels very similar to what Dex is going through.
Yeah, I think when they're finally alone and away from things, I think they feel like this is the first time that they're doing something just for themselves that isn't for anybody else.
They can let their guard down.
Yeah. They can sing in the shower. They can dance as they're drying off because there's nobody watching. They can do stuff just for the pure joy of it without fear of embarrassment or judgment, even as it's a very non judgmental society.
Right. Like, I think that there's a bit of a worry that if you practice something, again, that thought that you have to be good, like instantly good at something, that nothing takes time or practice, that nothing requires failing over and over and over again before you succeed.
There's that old quote from Adventure Time where being bad at something is the first step to maybe becoming kind of good at something. And everybody wants to skip that step.
Accurate.
Again, it's no guarantee that you will ever become good at something, but you have to start by being bad at something.
And even if you start off being pretty good at something, there's always room to go up.
Yeah.
There's always room to improve. I think actually starting off with what you think is your end point and never evolving from that is worse than starting off very badly and improving to either mediocre, good, whatever, without ever getting to excellent.
Right. It's the curse of the gifted kid again, or the autodidact, where when you pick something up and you're pretty good at it, you're not even aware that there is room for you to improve, so you don't.
I've had this problem before where I get kind of good at something, see where excellent would be, and go, I understand this, and now I'm bored. But there's something to be said for taking your time, really understanding the problem, working the knot until you actually get it undone,
Yeah, exactly.
instead of trying to just take a pair of scissors to it and hope for the best.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
I mean, the easy route isn't always the best route, and the fast route is rarely the best route.
Yeah. So I think freeing yourself from that fear of cringe, from that fear of failure, that fear of embarrassment, that fear of judgment. And let's be clear, the judgment that exists is mostly what Dex is projecting onto other people.
Onto themselves too. It's why, like, if you actually go into art as I went to university to do art, your starting classes will make you draw 10,000 teapots. You can't make every one of them perfect, but your 9,000th one will look better than your first one.
Almost certainly. And the progress between 1 and 9,000 may not be linear.
Right. Your 200th might look way worse than your first.
Yeah, that's just something that happens with these sorts of things. And I think you have to be okay with being bad at things. You have to be okay with recognizing that the things that you're trying to do are hard.
Like right now, our song that we're doing for the spring concert for our guitar lessons is Sad But True. And I swear to God, I started off being pretty okay with it and I got worse. And then you have to dig yourself up back out of that.
Yeah.
And I think at this point, we've dug ourselves out as well as it's going to happen because we're going to perform it in a week and a half. But we don't have to stop caring about the parts that we had to shunt. Like neither one of us were able to achieve the solos that we were trying to do. But that doesn't mean that we can't learn them ever. It just means that we're not learning them for this particular performance.
And it's all just a matter of having that grace for yourself that you would have for other people. Like the thing that we see is that when sibling Dex is out in the community, they are constantly telling people that it's okay to take a little bit of time for yourself, to understand that the things that you're dealing with are difficult.
And yet they have set themselves up with a schedule that they feel beholden to, that they feel like they aren't given the time to take care of themselves.
Even as no one begrudges them.
They will be patient and wait and kind and celebrate when Dex comes back. Now, one little tiny bit of plot thing that does actually happen at the end of chapter 2.
We meet the eponymous robot, because this isn't just the story of Monk. It is Monk and Robot. You can't have this Monk and Robot without Robot.
Robot in this case is
Mosscap.
who is delightful. We'll really get to meet them and understand more about them as time goes on, but Mosscap definitely is like a mirror for Dex, and especially to the service and purpose aspect of Dex's life.
His first words are, "Hello, my name is Mosscap. What do you need and how might I help?"
Which is lovely and caring, and also what in the heck? Because at this point, Dex is in that space where they are free from all of the burdens and are finally like just letting go of everything. And it's in that moment, just like everything puckers, right? Because you go from that point where you think no one's watching to like, and not only is it that, but it is, can you say a robot is a creature
I guess so.
that is surprising and new and weird and you didn't even really think existed?
And Dex finds himself in the position of being responsible for first contact with robot kind after centuries. They have to represent all of humanity to this charming little robot who's like 7 feet tall.
So not little. And also, do they have to represent like everyone?
They feel like they do.
Because of course they do. That's where we leave off. We're not going to really plot by plot this. We're going to miss a whole lot. This is a very charming book, and we're going to kind of butcher it for pieces throughout this whole series. I recommend taking the time to actually sit and read it, or I just got it on audiobook to reread it for this, and it's a lovely experience. I think that the reader is also non-binary, so it helps get you into Dex's frame of mind, get you into the world building. And it winds up being kind of a flow in a very similar way to The Slow Regard of Silent Things, not really being about the plot, but being about Ari,
I gotcha.
where it's the patter almost, the rhythm, and not so much the plot.
Yeah, it's about the interiority of these characters. Well, with that, let's go ahead and talk about some notable quotables. It was your turn this week. What did you pick?
So we did already talk about at least one of them. I have taken to taking photos of them. Also, our neighbor's dog is barking. I apologize. That would be Osmo.
Thanks, Osmo. You tell him.
So my first one is actually the dedication for anyone who could use a break. I think we are currently living in a time where burnout is one of the more prevalent states of being for so many of us.
I think burnout is also one of those symptoms of a life where you're struggling to find a purpose and you've dedicated it to something that maybe isn't providing what you need.
My next one. Before long, Dex was no longer nursing something as simple as an odd fancy for a faraway insect. The itch had spread to every aspect of their life. This happens when you become obsessed with the thing that you think is an answer to, you name it.
What's the answer to the question of life, the universe, and everything? And you become obsessed with that, and then it's just 42. Then you're stuck asking,
oh, sure.
What was the question?
The one that we referenced quite a bit. Dex realized with a stomach-souring thud that they were standing on the wrong side of the vast gulf between having read about doing a thing and doing the thing.
Yeah.
We've also talked about this in other spaces, but I don't think we specifically said it the way that is pointed out here. But Miss Jules took her tea to the comfy cushions and, in what looked like it might be the first time that day, sat down. She closed her eyes and let out a tremendous sigh. Her shoulders visibly slumped. She'd always had the ability to relax them. She just needed permission to do so. Dex gives permission for the people that visit them to relax, to take a load off, to take some time, to just sit, to think, to contemplate, to think about what's going on in their own space, or to not think, to just let go, to relax, to have a state change. But there's no one to give that permission structure to Dex besides Dex, partly because Dex won't let other people be that for them.
When they get invited to a town feast, they're okay with going until they discover it's in their honor, and then they start to feel a little uncomfortable about it.
They don't want the recognition, but they do. They don't want to be told that it's okay to relax, but they do. They don't want to be recognized for their excellence, but they do.
It's the paradoxical needs that we all may feel at one time or another in our lives, especially when we're young.
And then my last one, because it's funny, but frogs weren't crickets. Referencing the fact that when Dex slows down, they can hear the frogs, but frogs aren't crickets. It's not quite right.
Well, it is my turn for what we learned this week. So here's what I learned about. So we know that some animals can control their body temperature, like for instance, in the case of hibernation. As the seasons change, a lot of woodland mammals will enter a state of hibernation to get through the winter by slowing their metabolisms down such that they can go for extended periods without ready access to food, without expending calories, and they can just kind of sleep through it. But that's not all. There are also a lot of animals that are able to put themselves into these sort of states of torpor on a much shorter notice and for much shorter periods. So this ability to maintain stable body temperature, called homeothermy, exists among a myriad of species of animals and birds, but there are notable exceptions. For instance, the body temperature of the fat-tailed dwarf lemur can fluctuate by nearly 45 degrees Fahrenheit over a single day. And a growing body of research suggests that many more animals than scientists once appreciated employ this flexible approach, which is heterothermy, varying their body temperatures for minutes, hours, or weeks at a time. This can help the animals persist through all sorts of dangers. So the most extreme form is, of course, hibernation, but there are a lot of animals that can deploy shorter bouts of shallow torpor, loosely defined as smaller reductions in metabolism and smaller fluctuations in body temp as the need arises, suggesting that torpor has more functions than scientists previously realized. For instance, Australian eastern long-eared bats can adjust their torpor use based on day-to-day changes in weather conditions. So they spent more time in torpor when it was cold, but they also sank into torpor more often as rain and wind speeds picked up. This hunkering down makes sense because wind and rain make flying more energetically demanding, which is a big problem when you weigh less than a small packet of M&Ms, and it makes it more costly to find insects for the bats to eat. So in this case, it's not that it's cold, it's that there isn't going to be the ability to just go out and find food, so they just hunker down, go into torpor, and conserve their energy. There are even reports of pregnant hoary bats entering torpor during unpredictable spring storms, which is a physiological maneuver that basically pauses their pregnancies. Means that they can, to some degree, actually decide a bit when to give birth, which is really handy when you're living in an environment that can be quite harsh in the spring.
Which is interesting and misattributed to humans sometimes by people who don't read entire things.
Yes, this is bats, not people.
Right. Once again, bats aren't people.
Or miraculously, bats aren't humans. So it also lets them pause until times when there's more food, because producing milk is expensive metabolically. So waiting for a greater food supply means that they'll have a greater chance of producing milk for the babies. Meanwhile, other animals like sugar gliders, which are tiny pink-nosed marsupials that fly through the trees using wing-like folds of skin, they rarely use torpor but seem to take advantage of it in the case of major weather emergency. During a storm with a Category 1 cyclone winds of nearly 100 kilometers per hour, gliders were more likely to stay cuddled up in their tree hole nests, and many entered torpor, reducing body temperature from 94.1 Fahrenheit to an average of about 66 degrees Fahrenheit. They also found that in response to an accidental flooding, there is a period of multi-day torpor in a golden spiny mouse with its temperature reaching a low of about 75 degrees Fahrenheit. This more flexible use of a torpor can help heterotherms wait out a catastrophe that homeothermic species just simply can't. We humans, for instance, have a pretty consistent caloric intake requirement, and we can't just reduce our metabolisms on the fly to wait it out. So, yeah, I thought it was just really fascinating to see how different animals can deal with the situations around them. And it's also useful to remember that we humans are not the norm. We're just one of many different ways of being. So that's what I got.
Awesome.
You have thing of the week this week. What'd you pick?
All right, so I legitimately can't remember if we've already recommended Hades 2. So I am recommending Hades 2. I know we've absolutely sung the praises of Hades. I'd say that Hades 2 does a really good job of being a sequel to Hades with subtle differences, but also that they took the way that the narrative works and how it is applied to a roguelike and did some more interesting things with it than what Hades did. Because even though both of them, I'd say, have the majority of their gameplay and narrative structure after you beat the quote big bad, it's almost like with Hades 2, that's the point, and with Hades, that's a reality that that game structure gives. So, like, instead of it being like, we know you're going to get through this fast, so we have to have other content, it's this is structured so that you can get through this pretty fast and still have an interesting game to play.
Yeah, I notice also, whereas Hades 1 follows a relatively linear path, Hades 2 expands out in ways that are a little more non-linear. You're given multiple paths that you can take. Instead of, you're just always going through the same set of major worlds. Hades 2 has two different branching paths that you can go down, which are complete paths in and of themselves.
It gives you the opportunity to have some variety, but also each one of them plays off of other events and acknowledges that they both exist in ways that I think are clever and interesting. Like interesting as in compelling. And it also does some really fun stuff with, if you know Greek mythology, you can kind of put together some fun little almost Easter eggs. I mean, I don't know that I'd call them all Easter eggs, but like you can tell the thought that was put into it from a writing and narrative perspective by the group of people who made these games. Like they are very much interconnected and give you room to experiment.
It's a lot of fun. Like, as you would expect from any Supergiant game, the music is perfect. The voice direction is fun. Like, all of the character voices are distinct and interesting. The performances are engaging.
It's the level of detail that was paid attention to create this game. The way that things work together from like little bits to little bits. You're like, hey, what if I do this and combine it with this? And you're like, oh, well, that just brings a whole new perspective, whole new thing to look forward to, a whole new dopamine hit. And so, just in case we've already talked about Hades 2, I also do actually recommend, even if you've already read a book, seeking out the audiobook and seeing if that helps you change your perspective or helps enhance your enjoyment. And I'll pull up an interesting perspective, I'll pull up an interesting example for this. So I really enjoyed listening to Will Wheaton with all of the John Scalzi books that he narrated. And then I found out that two of the books, Lock In and Head On, have another reader for a reason. Because I knew that they did. I looked at it and I'm like, there's two different versions of the same book, and I don't understand why we've got a different reader. It's because the main character isn't gendered, like isn't referred to with a gender. And so one of the readers is Will Wheaton, so you feel like the main character is male. And the other reader is Amber Benson. And it's all told from a first person perspective, and it completely changes how I read the character, because when the reader is distinctly a different gender and there are no pronouns being used that are gendered for this person, it's like, whoa, wait, but wow, like the same words being spoken by a different reader can completely change the way that I read that character. Even more than just the gender of the character, but like the attitude of the character, for lack of better word, the characterization of the character, like who that person is may change a little bit based on inflection, based on tone. And it was really trippy and weird, but I really enjoyed it.
That's really cool.
And so I would absolutely recommend checking that out, like checking out both versions of that book or those books. And also just like, I'd say if you're having trouble getting into a book while trying to read it physically, like with your eyes instead of your ears, but you really, really want to know what happens in the book, or if you really are interested in the narrative, try it in a different format.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no shame in using audiobooks. It works better for some people, and it's just as valid as reading it with your eyes.
I don't think there's any use in being like superior about what type of reading you do. You still are consuming the narrative.
Exactly.
Although, like, it is definitely interesting. Like, there's some books where I've tried the audiobook because it's been recommended, and I'm not a fan of the reader. And then I need to give myself the chance to read it from the actual physical, words on paper book.
Yeah, I mean, it's a personal preference type thing, and it's not really a one size fits all sort of thing. Sometimes the reader really vibes with you, sometimes they don't, and that's a personal preference. And there's nothing wrong with bouncing off of that.
I'll not discuss exactly which book it is, but I will say that in this particular instance, it's something where the main character is supposed to be a Seattleite and they have a Southern drawl, and it just, no,
Doesn't work.
does not work for me.
Well, with that, I'd like to thank you for potting with me.
Thank you for potting with me.
And thanks for listening to Tales from the Waystone. Join us next time as we cover chapters 3 and 4 of A Psalm for the Wild Build.
We would like to thank our friend Shawnee Jang for our theme music.
And many thanks to Becky Chambers for creating this universe that we're exploring.
Audio production and editing, courtesy of me, Phoenix McCullough.
And writing and project management, courtesy of me, Will McCullough.
If you would like to help support us and have the means to do so, please consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page, patreon.com/waystonepod. Currently, the perk to that is you can listen to this a little bit earlier, and if you pay a little bit more, you can get some bonus pods. Really, I'd much rather you join us on our Discord and talk about geeky things and tell us books that you think that we should read and TV shows that you think that we should watch and music that you think that we should listen to and that we would love. Also games.
You know, the usual.
And also share pictures of pets or other cute animals or anything that floats your goat.
Well, as always, here's to one more day above the roses.
To one more day above the roses.
Ding! Good job.
Give me a second to not sound like my throat is coated in phlegm, because it is.
Coated in phlegm. Fun, right?
No.
No, not even a little.
No.